and welcome back to I Completed 80s Music. I'm your host, the 80s Mixtaper, and I'd like to start today with an apology to regular listeners, as we've been a bit more sporadic than our usual Friday release date. This was due to a holiday, and then Muggins here catching a stinker of a head cold, which you can probably still hear on me now, meaning recording anything would have been a garbled, snotty affair. So there's been a slightly longer break than planned, but we are back. For any newcomers to the pod, back in 2016, I set out to listen to every single charting entry of the UK charts from the 31st of December 1979 to the 31st of December 1989. This was in a bid to better understand the decade when I was a child. I was a Britpop teen at heart, but wanted to know more about the decade before. After a slow start, by the time COVID and lockdowns were coming to an end, I'd blasted my way through several thousand singles, and this podcast is the story of that journey, one song at a time. Each week, we take a playlist of 13 songs like the albums of yesterday and break it down into 2 episodes of 6 or 7 songs and look at the backstory, the chart positions, the highs, the lows, the scandals, and also any memories we all share from that era. To that end, we had an outpouring of love this week for that shimmering beauty of a song, I'm in Love with a German Film Star by the Passions, both over on Threads and TikTok. Capricorn Picnic said it was the best song ever. Kenny Irwin 9465 says I love this tune. Takes me back to my early teenage years of being obsessed with music. Absolutely sumptuous. Simple Man 1917 said 1981. Wow, I'm getting old. Great track though. And CCBOTP said magnificent from beginning to end. It's certainly up there for the best song of 1981. That echoey guitar just giving so much meaning and structure to the track. I think when we covered it in episode 19, I described it as being like a fresh rainwater shimmering on the asphalt outside a neon-lit bar. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can find me on all your socials as the 80s Mixtaper, or email me at completed80s@aol.com. So, what's coming up in the first half of Playlist 29? Well, now we're into Autumn 81, and the hits keep coming. We meet the Tubes, we meet those 1980s trendsetters Godley and Creme, we get possibly the most stupidly catchy song of the 80s for birthdays, the Birdie Song, we get Lionel Richie going solo, and Adam and the Ants, Apex, amongst others. As usual, we can't play the songs on the pod due to copyright laws, but you will find playlists for both Spotify and Apple Music in the episode description, alongside a full track listening, so you too can listen along while taking your dog out for a walk. So without further ado, let's get back to the music. We last left Joan Armatrading in 1980, way back in episode 10.5, where Me, Myself, I rolled out as this tidy declaration of independence, self-contained, finger-picked, and peaking at number 18 on the UK singles chart. Her biggest splash since Love and Affection 4 years prior. That track, with its crisp Valley Media sheen and Armatrading's voice cutting through like a polite but firm houseguest, signalled she was ready to stretch beyond the folk rock confines that had boxed her in since Whatever's For Us back in 1972. By 1981, she'd enlisted Steve Lillywhite, fresh off engineering Peter Gabriel's 3 and producing the Psychedelic Furs debut, to helm her 7th album, Walk Under Ladders. The result? A record that clocks in at just under 36 minutes, but pulls in half a dozen genres. Synth-glazed pop, reggae skanks, art rock edges, even a touch of R&B swing. It's Armatrading at her most collaborative, drawing session players from Gabriel's circle and beyond, all while she handles every composition herself. The lead single, I'm Lucky, dropped in August 1981, a month ahead of the album's September the 4th release on A&M Records. This is track 1, Playlist 29. Press play now. Clocking in at 3 minutes and 6 seconds, Unlucky has that median tempo soul groove Armatrading had toyed with before, but Lillywhite dresses it up in strident synths and snare cracks from his Gabriel sessions. Thomas Dolby, whose debut The Golden Age of Wireless had just landed, lays down most keyboard parts across the album, giving I'm Lucky a liquid, modern for 81 bubbling undercurrent in the verses. David Rhodes handles electric guitars, Tony Levin's stick bass, and Jerry Marotta drums up the crisp pulse, with Larry Fast adding synths. Sly Dunbar and Robbie Shakespeare appear on other album tracks, their reggae influence showing in offbeat accents. Armatrading sticks to lead vocals here, letting the ensemble drive while her warm rye voice steers. Lyrically, it's a cheeky tally of Fortune's quirks. I'm lucky, I can walk under ladders. Yes, I'm so lucky that I'm as lucky as me. And later, struck it rich, dirty rich, no work, and get richer. And the world loves a winner. Yes, I'm so happy that you're happy with me. The song entered the UK singles chart at number 54 on September the 12th, 1981. The same week, Walk Under Ladders debuted at number 14 on albums. I'm Lucky hit number 46 by September the 26th, held 1 week, then fell to number 51 and number 64 before dropping off after 5 weeks. Enough to help the album peak at number 6 and earn gold for 100,000 UK sales, though it missed the top 40. Stateside, the album reached number 56 on the Billboard 200. Sooney Pawson in Record Mirror called it pleasant enough. Tim Delisle in Smash Hits said the song was just the kind that made Joan popular, mellow, medium-paced soul, beautifully sung, but added, strident synthesizers and snare drums, here the combination doesn't work. I have to totally disagree with that. I think the synths bring her up to date. Those synths can overwhelm the intimacy from Me, Myself, I, but they fit Lily White's push into UK pop currents of 1981. The 2010 Cherry Pop reissue added bonus tracks, leaving I'm Lucky intact. The song slots between Me, Myself, I's autonomy and Drop the Pilot's snap, Armatrading testing ensemble work without losing footing. 5 singles spun from the album, not all hit, but sales held overseas, like number 16 in Australia. By The Key in 1983, she'd refined the polish, but I'm Lucky marks the beautiful continuation of Joan's work. Fortune favours the bold who share it. For track 2, in the dim glow of a San Francisco rehearsal space, where the air still carried the faint tang of patchouli from the previous decade's haze, the Tubes cut a track that peeled back their layers of satire just enough to reveal the muscle beneath. I Don't Want to Wait Anymore, released as a single in April 1981 on Capitol Records, arrived like a dispatch from the band long accustomed to sending up the absurdities of American excess. Sung not by frontman Fee Waybill, but by guitarist Bill Spooner, the song unfurls over 4 minutes and 16 seconds of building synth washes and a chorus that should come with an air grab included. Press play now. Co-written by the full band, Spooner, Waybill, Roger Steen, Prairie Prince, Vince Welnick, Rick Anderson and Michael Cotton, along with producer David Foster, it peaked at number 35 on the Billboard Hot 100, holding the spot for 2 weeks and marking the group's first entry into the US Top 40. On the mainstream rock chart, it hit number 22. The B-side, Thinking About Me, nodded to the band's edgier new wave leanings, but it was the A-side's polished yearning that caught radio programmers off guard, turning a collection of post-apocalyptic vignettes into something that played well in the early Reagan era's fluorescent-lit suburbs. The Tubes didn't stumble into this moment of chart traction. They careened towards it from the sun-baked sprawl of Phoenix, Arizona, where the core of the band first coalesced in the late 1960s. Bill Spooner, born William Spooner on August the 16th, 1949, picked up the guitar early, cycling through cover bands like the XLs, who aped the Beatles with teenage precision. By high school, Spooner had linked up with Rick Anderson on bass and a rotating cast that included the future keyboardist Vince Welnick, forming the Beans, later rechristened the Radar Men from Uranus, for gigs in biker bars and art openings. Parallel to this, across town, Prairie Prince, born Charles Lempriere Prince on May the 7th, 1950 in Charlotte, North Carolina, but raised in Phoenix, drummed alongside guitarist Roger Steen in the Red, White and Blues band. Prince, who got his nickname from a childhood nanny's garbled take on his middle name, had been knocking around Phoenix garages since the mid-1960s, trading licks with Steen in a setup that prized loose jams over strict formations. The metamorphosis came in 1969 when Prince enrolled at the San Francisco Art Institute on a scholarship, hauling his kit north in a beat-up van. Spooner, Anderson and the rest of the Beans piled behind him, chasing the city's post-hippie ferment. Steen and Prince's group merged into the fray, and John Waldo Fee Waybill, initially the truck-driving roadie, a theatre major who ditched college for the road, stepped into the spotlight. Born September the 17th, 1950 in Omaha, but transplanted to Arizona as a kid, Waybill brought a performer's elasticity, channeling characters from lounge lizards to punk provocateurs. Michael Cotton, another Art Institute alum and Prince's high school chum, rounded out the seventh piece with ARP synthesizer flourishes. His Waves mural splashed across the Cliff House restaurant, drawing early ink from local rags. Ree Stiles, real name Regina Robertson, joined as co-vocalist, her burlesque edge sharpening the group's gender-bending sketches. Mingo Lewis, fresh off Santana's Woodstock run, added percussion for a spell before exiting. By March 1972, they were the Tubes, named after a discarded demo tape label or a nod to the era's slang for television's hypnotic glow. Their debut show, at an art reception for future director Catherine Bigelow, mixed rock with vaudeville. Waybill as a leotard-clad hustler, Spooner and Steen trading vocals mid-riff, Prince's kit rigged for hydraulic lifts. Bill Graham caught wind of them after local promoter Bob Herbert booked 3 sold-out nights at the Village Club, themed around streakers and bondage, fulfilling a pact for an opening slot. Herbert picked Led Zeppelin's Kazaa Stadium gig in 1972, where the Tubes unleashed flower bombs as cocaine and candy as pills. Waybill's Quaalude persona, dodging mock amplification stacks. Graham, apoplectic, cut their set short, but the stunt landed them in Circus magazine as the Bull Goose Loonies from the San Francisco scene. A&M Records signed them in 1975 after demos bounced from other labels. Al Cooper produced the self-titled debut, released that May, aiming for a Broadway sheen. 2 months in the studio, horns swelling on tracks like Up From the Rear. It scraped to number 113 on the Billboard 200, buoyed by white punks on dope, a sneering dissection of Marin County trust funders that cracked the Hot 100 at number 76. Live, it was chaos, Waybill beating planted audience plants in a crime medley, then emerging as a bloodied Quaalude for the final. The 1976 follow-up Young and Rich, helmed by Ken Scott, fresh off Bowie and Zeppelin, doubled down, peaking at number 61. Don't Touch Me There parodied Spectre girl groups with Styles' sultry taunts, while Proud to Be Loud skewered jingoism. But sales lagged behind the spectacle. A&M grew restless as tour costs mounted for fog machines and dancers. Now, in 1977, captured the drift. Recorded amongst label friction, Spooner later called it a product of difficult times, per liner notes quoting Steen, "If you figure out how this album fits together, call The Office." It stiffed at number 116. What Do You Want From Live, a double disc from Hammersmith Odeon, preserved the pandemonium. Bootleg videos showed Waybill's Johnny Bugger ranting through Stand Up and Shout, Prince's Riser wheeling him into the fray. Remote Control in 1979, produced by Todd Rundgren, fared better at number 37. Its title track, a video store narrative with Waybill as a fame-chasing dolt. But A&M, debt deep from elaborate promo, cut ties after Waybill's manager Ricky Farr reportedly insulted label head Jerry Moss's taste to force an exit. A rarities dump, Trash, followed in 1981, compiled by friend Matt Leach. Capitol Records beckoned via Blood, Sweat and Tears Bobby Colomby, who pitched David Foster after trials with Jeff Skunk Baxter. Foster, riding Earth, Wind and Fire streak, engineered a pivot, less theatre, more hooks. The completion backward principle dropped on April 6, 1981, its title lifted from a sales training manual. Artwork by Cotton and Prince cast the band in suits, motivational posters in tow. Satire of Reagan's Morning in America, with tracks like Mr. Hate and Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, threading corporate absurdism. Humberto Gattaca engineered, Paul Lanny and Don Smith assisting background vocals, with Bill Champlin and Bobby Colomby and Toto Steve Lukather, who co-penned Talk to You Later in a one-day blitz. The album hit number 36 on the Billboard 200, the band's highest to date. I Don't Want to Wait Anymore emerged from this churn, mostly Welnick's piano blueprint turned ballad. Foster tweaked it for radio, eyeing Champlin for vocals before Spooner claimed the mic. His tenor, rawer, less polished. The lyrics paint isolation as a catalyst. We could be the last two on earth to start a new world. Just you and me, girl. Try and you can almost see how it could be. Just you and me, lost, trapped in the freezing cold, barely alive, having to make love to survive. I'll show you how it's done. We'll take it as it comes. A rocket to the sun. I don't want to wait anymore. I just don't think I have the strength to carry on. Spooner, in a 2014 Musoscribe interview, reflected on the band's sound. Vince was always writing these big piano kind of overblown type melodies. And it was nice, we liked it. We turned it into this sort of modern subterranean angst thing about the fragility of life. It scratched number 60 in the UK, but US rock stations lapped it up, sandwiched between Journey and Toto. Foster's gloss and Lukather's licks and Gattaca's mix masked the band's fatigue post-Xanadu. Waybill had dabbled in acting, Prince in session work. Yet the track endures. From Zappa Beefheart influences to pop infrastructure, the Tubes traded some subversion for sustainability. Spooner handled lead on 3 completion cuts, his amnesia a bleary confessional. The album's spine, though, was this refusal to idle, apt for a group that wants pogo stripped on stage. By summer 1981, the Tubes toured Europe with a streamlined show, dancers including Cynthia Rhodes' pre-Flashdance, designs by Cotton, Prince and choreographer Kenny Ortega. I Don't Want to Wait Anymore closed sets, Spooner's voice cracking over arena echoes. It wasn't their last mask, but it was the first without the full grease paint. For track 3, we find ourselves enduring the rattle of a rain-lashed railway carriage, where a man's solitude unravels. Quote, I was standing in the station, being pounded by the rain, so I chose the last compartment of a stationary train. Begins Under Your Thumb, the 1981 single by Godley and Creme. What follows is a ghost story set to a pulsing synth rhythm. A spectral woman boards behind him, her whispers cutting through the storm. Don't want to be under your thumb forever. Until a crumpled newspaper reveals her suicide, her face staring back from the page. This is track 3, playlist 29. Released on August the 21st, 1981, as the lead track from their 4th album, Ismism, the song climbed to number 3 on the UK singles chart, spending 10 weeks in the top 40 and entering at number 49 on September the 6th. Backed by the power behind the throne, it marked a change for Kevin Godley and Lol Creme from the sprawling experiments of their early solo work towards something sharper, more narrative-driven, with drum machines mimicking the clatter of wheels on track. Godley and Creme's path to that compartment began decades earlier, in the post-war grit of Prestwich, a suburb north of Manchester. Kevin Godley arrived first, born October the 7th, 1945, to a Jewish family. Lol Creme, full name Lawrence Neil Creme, followed on September the 17th, 1947, in the same neighbourhood. They met as boys, Godley aged 8 and Creme at 10, when Godley auditioned for the role of the Hunchback of Notre Dame in a homemade 8mm film Creme was directing. That early collaboration stuck. Both attended art school, Godley in Manchester, Creme in Birmingham, where he adopted the nickname Lolagon before graduating in 1968. Music pulled them in during the 1960s R&B boom. They joined the Sabres, a white soul covers band that supported the likes of the Mindbenders, and cut a one-off single as Yellow Bellow Room Boom for CBS in 1967, Seeing Things Green backed with Easy Life. By 1969, they had linked up with Graham Gouldman and Eric Stewart at Strawberry Studios in Stockport, a converted bicycle factory turned recording hub. There, amid the hum of Ampex tape machines, they formed Hot Legs, a short-lived outfit that scored a 1970 hit with the bubblegum instrumental Neanderthal Man, which reached number 2 in the UK and sold 1 million copies worldwide. Hot Legs morphed into 10cc in 1972, with Godley on drums and vocals, Creme on guitar, and multi-instrumentalist duties. The quartet, Godley, Creme, Goldman and Stewart operated as a songwriting collective, cranking out wry pop gens like Donna in 1972, which hit number 2, Rubber Bullets in 73, which hit number 1. Their studio wizardry peaked on I'm Not in Love from 1975's the original soundtrack, where Godley and Creme layered 256 vocal tracks into a lush synthetic choir, a technique born from frustration over a backing vocal session. The song hit number 1 in the UK and number 2 in the US, earning a Grammy nomination for Best Engineered Recording. Tension simmered though. Godley and Creme leaned experimental while Goldman and Stewart favoured hooks. During sessions for 1976 How Dare You, the divide sharpened. Godley later called it a clash over musical differences, with the pair eager to chase side projects. They bolted mid-recording, leaving the album half-finished, to refine the gizmo, a guitar attachment they invented with engineer Richard Niles. The device used rotating wheels on the strings to produce infinite sustains and eerie swells, debuting on 10cc's Abandoned Tracks and later on their solo debut. Godley described it in a 1977 interview as a module which attached to the bridge of an electric guitar, capable of bending notes across octaves without pitch-shifting pedals. We digress. The duo formalised in Manchester in November 1976, dubbing themselves Godley and Creme. Their first release, the triple album Consequences in 1977, sprawled over 3 LPs, with contributions from Peter Cook, drummer Peter Starstead, and Roxy Music's Phil Manzanera. A 77-minute concept about a fading rock star that critics dismissed as self-indulgent. L in 1978, a single vinyl of Zappa-esque sketches, fared better. John Peel, playing a track on his BBC Radio 1 show in August 1978, admitted, as one of the very few people on the planet who sat down and listened to the entire 26 LP of Consequences, I wasn't really looking forward a great deal to the new LP by Godley and Creme, and I was greatly surprised when I did listen to it. Some of it is very good indeed. This was followed by Freeze Frame in 1979, which included guest spots from Manzanera and Paul McCartney on Get Well Soon. By then, they had storyboarded their first video for An Englishman in New York, directed by Derek Burbidge. Ismism, released on October the 23rd, 1981 on Polydor as Snack Attack in the US, distilled their sprawl into 10 tracks of synth-pop laced with unease. Godley and Creme produced it themselves, playing most instruments save for saxophonist Bimbo Aycock's contributions. Under Your Thumb arrived amid Britain's second wave of synth acts, but its narrative, man haunted by a jumper's ghost, chorus pleading escape from control, echoed the Rolling Stones' Under My Thumb, while flipping the gaze to female desperation. The lyrics build methodically. After the whispers and screams of the verses, the bridge pivots, so I picked up an old newspaper to read, and I noticed something very strange indeed. To the chilling reveal, woman throws herself from speeding train, identity unknown. Beyond the charts, Godley and Creme reshaped pop's visual language. Starting with their own clips, they directed numerous videos in the early 1980s, pre-MTV boom. For Duran Duran, they helmed the uncensored Girls on Film in 1981 at Shepperton Studios, featuring topless models in slow-motion wrestling, a 6-minute provocation edited for MTV broadcast, helping propel the band stateside. They returned for A View to Kill in 1985, Duran Duran's Bond theme. The Police got Every Breath You Take in 83, noted for its stark monochrome style. Herbie Hancock's Rocket in 83 deployed stop-motion robots and turntablists, winning Video of the Year at the first MTV VMAs. Frankie Goes to Hollywood's Two Tribes in 84, featuring Reagan and Chernenko in a wrestling ring. The Power of Love in 84 evoked a haunted mansion. Peter Gabriel and Kate Bush's Don't Give Up in 86 intercut their duet with Depression-era imagery. These weren't mere promos, they were short films that amplified themes. Control in Under Your Thumb mirrored the voyeurism in Girls on Film, the surveillance in Every Breath You Take. Their Own Cry in 85 pioneered digital morphing, blending faces in black and white dissolves, influencing later videos like Michael Jackson's Black or White. By 1983, Birds of Prey, they balanced directing gigs with albums, but the partnership wound down after Goodbye Blue Sky in 88. Creme later joined Art of Noise, Godley continued directing. Their pre-10cc track, The Boys in Blue, lingers in pop culture, adopted as Manchester City FC's unofficial anthem in the 90s, and still played at the Etihad Stadium. In 2022, Grapefruit Records released Frabjous Days, The Secret World of Godley and Creme, 1967-69, compiling early material. Creme, reflecting on their era, noted the partnership's profound impact. The ghost in the carriage fades, but the echoes on vinyl, screen and stadium speakers persist. Right then, children of the 80s, prepare to dance in a really silly way. In the autumn of 1981, as leaves turned under a grey English sky, a peculiar instrumental track clattered onto the UK singles chart, propelled not by soaring vocals or intricate guitar solos, but by the simple mechanics of flapping elbows and hooked thumbs. The Birdie Song, released by a novelty act called The Tweets on Precision Records, peaked at number 2, holding that spot for 3 weeks and lingering on the charts for a total of 30. So here it is, folks, the soundtrack to every birthday party of the early 80s, with a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and shake your bum. And while we're here, let's dive into why the 80s was such a melting pot for novelty school disco songs. This is track 4. Produced by Henry Hadaway, the song was an adaptation of a melody first played on accordion by Swiss musician Werner Thomas in the 1950s, originally titled De Ententanz, or The Duck Dance, a tune that had already wormed its way into European folk festivals through polka circles and beer tents. The Tweets version stripped it to its bones, an upbeat umpa rhythm layered with keyboards, drums and a lot of tweeting. All clocking in at just under 3 minutes. No words really, just the implied script of the dance itself, where participants form a line, pump their arms like wings and waggle their posteriors in mock avian glee. It sold enough to nudge out serious contenders like the Human League's Love Action, but fell short of the top spot, blocked by Dave Stewart and Barbara Gaskin's It's My Party, a song we'll be hearing next week. For a fleeting season or 5, wedding receptions and village halls filled with the sights of aunts in floral dresses and uncles loosening ties, all reduced to a feathered conga. The Tweets themselves emerged from the fringes of Britain's live circuit, a loose collective dressed in oversized bird costumes, plush plumage, colour dependent on the bird of course, googly eyes and beaks that bobbed with every step. Formed around 1980 by Hadaway, a seasoned producer with a sideline in session work, the group drew core members from East Anglia's pub rock scene. Costumes came from a theatrical supplier in London, budget mascots meant for pantomimes, repurposed for telly appearances. By September, demo copies circulated to DJs at Butlin's holiday camps, where the dance caught on amongst off-season staff, priming the pump for wider airplay. This was no overnight invention. The melody's lineage stretched back further to Werner Thomas's 1950s improvisation for a restaurant gig, its 4-beat cycle echoing Bavarian waltzes and Alpine yodels. Thomas copyrighted it in 1972 as Vogeltanz, but bootleg versions proliferated. A French take by René and Nathalie Simarda's Les Danses des Canards hit shelves in 1981, while Brazilian performer Gugu Liberato folded it into his album, and I'm going to butcher this, Baile dos Pasarinos, I think that's it, sparking a stammer-inflected craze in Sao Paulo clubs. In Britain, the song simmered in émigré communities before Hadaway's nudge. The Tweets' gamble paid off in metrics, if not legacy. Their follow-up, The Birdie Dance, eked into the charts at number 44 in December 1981, a vocal twist on the formula with chirpy refrains, tweet, 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 like the birdies sing. But it vanished after 6 weeks. A 1983 reissue of the original limped to number 81, buoyed by Eurovision spillover, yet the band dissolved soon after, Hadaway pivoting to production gigs, others to session obscurity or to family life. No tours, no albums, just the single, etched into one-hit annals. In a 2000 Dot Music poll of pop's low points, voters tagged The Birdie Song as the most annoying track ever, with one critic from The Guardian dismissing it as the auditory equivalent of a rubber chicken. Yet chart data tells another story. 30 weeks is longevity most synth-pop hopefuls envied. That same year, the UK airways brimmed with kin to the Tweet's Feathery Lark, tracks engineered for the sticky-floored purgatory of school discos, where tweens in ill-fitting blazers shuffled under disco balls strung from gym ceilings. These were the anthems of reluctant grooves, simple enough for PE teachers to referee and infectious enough to survive parental vetoes. Otter One, who we've met twice before, had already primed the ground with DISCO, a single that reached number 5 on the UK chart in early 1981. The track's Euro disco pulse, clavinet stabs, vocoder echoes, and a 4-on-the-floor beat lent itself to line dances in assembly halls. Its bilingual charm bridging French Riviera clubs to Merseyside youth clubs. Black Lace, a Yorkshire duo of Colin Gibb and Alan Barton, who we will definitely be meeting, embodied the genre's cheekier edge. Their output a catalogue of enforced merriment. Black Lace's real school disco imprint came through live sets at Pontin's camps, where they'd lead crowds in congas to originals like Do the Conga, a 1984 chart lodger at number 13 with its call and response charts. The tweets fit snugly, no deeper lore, just the dance, captured in a Legs & Co routine on top of the pops from October the 15th, 1981, where 6 dancers in sequins trace the steps behind the costume band, elbows akimbo. Viewer letters to the BBC around that month griped about the daftness, but noted the kids wouldn't sit for it. Daftness was the point. In an era bracketed by Thatcher's austerity and Falkland's build-up, these tracks offered recess from the grind. 5 minutes of collective silliness before the bell. The tweets vanish post-chart, their costumes mothballed, but the melody persists. At Preston's Radio 2 in the Park in 2024, a Black Lace splinter act dusted it off for Paddy McGuinness's Sunday School Disco, drawing grey-haired lines to flap once more. Next up, an important moment in the Lionel Richie story. The moment he goes solo. Well, almost. This song is actually a collaboration with Diana Ross. We've obviously met both at this point. Ross for her 1980 heaters like Upside Down, those Nile Rodgers jams that had her ruling again, and Richie as the Commodore's ballad architect, crafting tearjerkers like Easy and 3 Times a Lady. In 81, they merged for a track that's less a duet and more a Motown torch passing, launching Richie's solo career and capping Ross's label run with a velvet hammer. This is Endless Love, our track 5 today. It starts, as these things often do, in Hollywood. Director Franco Zeffirelli and producer John Peters are adapting Scott Spencer's 1979 novel Endless Love into a Brooke Shields vehicle, a teen romance that spirals into obsession and arson. Zeffirelli wants an orchestral score for The Longing Glances, so Peters taps Richie, hot off writing Kenny Rogers' 1980 number 1 Lady. Richie in return delivers an instrumental, but Zeffirelli switches gears, make it a duet. Ross, rapping her Motown era amid a $20 million RCA deal and challenges with Berry Gordy, signs on. Recording's a sprint. Ross is mid-tour, headlining Lake Tahoe in May 1981. Richie flies in from LA. They hit a Reno studio at 3:30am on May the 8th. Ross, always punctual, is locked in. Richie's a bit late, which bugs her. Quote, "I'm a perfectionist. I like to be on time, always. Lionel was not always on time," she told Classic Motown. They rap vocals quickly, with Richie producing and Gene Page adding lush strings. Motown drops the single on June the 26th. The film hits July the 17th, earning $32 million, but panned by critics. The song, however, is a beast. On the Billboard Hot 100, it enters at number 54 on July the 5th, hits number 1 by August the 15th, and holds for 9 weeks through October the 10th, the longest for any duet then. It tops R&B and adult contemporary charts, ruling all 3 for 3 weeks starting September the 5th, a feat only outdone by Ray Charles and Whitney Houston. Reported sales hit 3 million, Motown's biggest to that point. It tops Australia, Canada, Japan, New Zealand. In the UK, it debuts on the 12th of September, eventually peaking at number 7, but stays in the chart for 12 weeks. Richie's lyrics are straight to the heart. He opens, "My love, there's only you in my life, the only thing that's bright. My first love, you're every breath that I take, you're every step I make." They share the chorus, "And I want to share all my love with you, no one else will do. And your eyes, they tell me how much you care. Oh yes, you always will be, my endless love." Ross takes verse 2. The track is pure Commodore soul, now done on a wider scale. Pop culture eats it up. The song becomes a shorthand for big gooey romance. Wedding playlists, it's a staple. Karaoke bars, a duet default. By 1999, it's so iconic that Friends uses it for a gag in Season 5, Episode 14, the one where everybody finds out, with Phoebe and Chandler overplaying the chorus but butchering the ending and becoming a cultural touchstone for the show. Luther Vandross and Mariah Carey's 1994 cover hits number 2, and countless reality show montages lean on its swell. Awards stack. 5 Grammy nods in 1981, including Record and Song of the Year, losing to Betty Davis' Eyes. It's up for a 1982 Oscar and Golden Globe, performed live by Ross and Richie at the Academy Awards, their only joint stage moment. Ross includes it on her 1981 All the Great Hits, and re-records it solo for her RCA debut, Why Do Fools Fall in Love. For Richie, it's the launch pad. Still with the Commodores, he's stretching. Writing Lady proved he could cross genres. The Oscars gig, with Ross owning the stage, rattles him. Quote, "The pressure of that 24 hours was pretty incredible," he told Billboard in 2016. Motown sees his future. By October, he's eyeing a Commodore's exit, official in 1982. His solo debut, Lionel Richie, drops that October, sells 4 million, spawns number 1, Truly. Can't Slow Down in 83 grabs Grammys. Endless Love is the catalyst. They never sing it together again. Richie's joked for years about Ross saying no, like at a 2018 show. She performs it solo sometimes. He pairs it with Shania Twain on 2012's Tuskegee. But the original, with its piano pulse and string saw, defines 1981's soft heart. Ross called it brilliant in her memoir. It's Richie stepping forward, Ross stepping back, and a duet that outshines its film, still echoing in bad karaoke and sitcom gags. Next up for track 6, it's the apex of the Adam and the Ants moment. We've covered the pirate swagger of Kings of the Wild Frontier, that whole Burundi drum assault that turned the band from post-punk oddballs into chart marauders, and then Stand and Deliver, storming straight to number 1 in May 81, with Adam as the dandy highwayman robbing the rich of their bad taste. That single sold 1.3 million copies in the UK by 2023, ranking it at number 141 on the official chart company's all-time bestsellers list. The Ants were inescapable. Kids in face paint, smash hit covers every other week, the works. But is Prince Charming, their follow-up single out on September the 4th, 1981, the absolute peak of this frenzy? Or just the last gasp before the empire cracks? Let's dig into it. Don your warpaint, and for goodness sake, scream along to the opening war cries. Written as always by Adam Ant and his right-hand riff machine Marco Perroni, Prince Charming lands as the title track to the band's third album, which drops 2 months later on November the 6th. Recorded at Air Studios in London during August 81, with producer Chris Hughes, aka Merrick, the band's drummer, on the first 2 records handling the knobs again. Hughes steps out from behind the kit here for a key part. That chiming, open-tuned acoustic guitar riff threading through the verses like a harpsichord gone feral. Perroni mimes it on a full-size orchestral harp and then a tiny toy one in the video, because why not lean into the absurdity? Perroni described the song as a cleverer song than any of you realise, noting how the dance routine grew from the beat's odd footing, unlikely for discos at the time. The lyrics hammer home this dandy manifesto. It opens with the chorus of encouragement, don't you ever, stop being dandy, showing me you're handsome. Then the hook, Prince Charming, ridicule is nothing to be scared of. Verse 2 flips to warnings. Don't you ever lower yourself, forgetting all your standards. And the bridge name checks wardrobe choices. Silk or leather, fur or feather, respect yourself and all of those around you. It's Adam talking to himself or to anyone staring down the mirror, urging them to hold the line on personal flair no matter the jeers. Adam laid it out plain. I was very interested in going back. I'd been reading the early Brothers Grimm fairy tales, which had always fascinated me. Prince Charming is based on Beau Brummell, the British dandy leader of fashion in the 18th century. Brummell, the original metrosexual regent, who turned tailoring into a weapon and snubbed the Prince Regent to his face. No capes or crowns required, just sharp elbows and sharper cheekbones. Musically, it's the Ants' tribal pulse refined to a diamond edge. Those dual drums from Terry Lee Meal and Hughes lock in the beat. Bassist Gary Tibbs, replacing Kevin Mooney, who'd got the sack after clowning through the Royal Variety performance in February 81, lays down a walking line that's half Motown, half March. And yeah, there's the shadow of Rolf Harris's 1965 war canoe in the melody, both cribbed from an old Maori war chant recording. Harris claimed in March 2010 on BBC Radio 5 Live Danny Baker Show that an out-of-court settlement had been reached with large sum of royalties received after a musicologist found the two songs musically identical. But producer Chris Hughes said Harris withdrew the complaint with a bit of a giggle when Adam pointed out that both tracks borrowed heavily from the original Maori source. And I think history will land more on Adam Ant's side on that one. Chart-wise, Prince Charming enters the UK singles chart at number 8 on September the 13th, then rockets to number 1 by September the 20th, holding the top spot for 4 straight weeks through October the 18th. That's the 5th biggest single of 81 overall, with sales pushing past 1 million. The album cracks the top 10 at number 2, certified platinum in the UK for 300,000 units shipped. Still, 3 singles from Prince Charming, Stand and Deliver at number 1 for 5 weeks, and this one for 4, and Ant Rap, the next single, remixed to number 3 in January 1982, put the Ants at 7 tracks in the top 40, simultaneously that autumn and winter. In the US, it's quieter. The single peaks at number 70 on the Billboard Hot 100, but the video helps crack MTV, where Adam's visuals were already legend from Ant Music. Speaking of the video, directed by Adam and Mike Mansfield, it's a fever dream shot at Shepperton Studios, rented from Hammer film sets. Adam's Cinderella in drag, scullery boy in rags, bullied by mustachioed stepsisters, played by the band's roadies in frocks. Enter Diana Dawes as the fairy godmother, all peroxide and pearls, flanked by 5 oiled-up dancers in loincloths, doing the Prince Charming routine. Wave the wand, and Adam's in Regency finery, swinging from a chandelier into a ballroom bash. Choreographer Stephanie Coleman breaks the dance down. Arm cross pulls for pride, courage, humour and flair, each a slice of Adam's psyche. The finale, Adam shatters a mirror, then shapeshifts through icons. Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name, Alice Cooper's Glam Snarl, Rudolph Valentino's Shake, Marlon Brando's Godfather, which was swapped in edits for the Highwayman Redux. It's one of Dawes' last on-screen gigs. She died in 84. Peroni mimes his heartbits deadpan, while the Ants strut in powdered wigs and stripes. The whole thing aired on Top of the Pops in early October, sparking copycat dances in clubs from Manchester to Margate. So Apex? Financially, yes. This single cements the Ants as the UK top single act of 81, with Prince Charming the album moving units hand over fist. But cracks show. The rush to record after Stand and Deliver's Maelstrom leaves the LP feeling patched, as All Music Stephen Thomas Erlewine noted in a retrospective. The songs just aren't there. It simply has style and sound. Critics like smash hits Ian Birch called it 5 out of 10, saying, "Gone are the strong melodies that made Kings of the World Frontier so addictive. In our elaborate details. The surface might be glossily busy, but it's no substitute for good songs." Internally, exhaustion brews. Hughes jets off to produce a relatively unknown band's new album. That unknown band turned out to be Tears for Fears, and their album, The Hurting. Mooney's gone. Tibbs is solid, but no spark plug. By January 82, after the Prince Charming review tour hits Australia and Japan, Adam disbands the Ants for a solo run, keeping Peroni as co-writer. Newspaper accounts from the time quoted Adam saying the split was amicable at first, then later that the interest just wasn't there anymore. It might have been Adam and the Ants on the billboards, but not on stage. For me, as a 3-year-old child, it is the first Apex pop moment we all remember, alongside Shakin' Stevens doing his thing. The fairy tale ends, but not before Prince Charming tattoos itself on an era. A long reign where dandies ruled, and ridicule, well, it's nothing to be scared of. For our final track today, this is a story about a band beyond their heyday, so we won't see a lot of them on this pod, but they are still part of the zeitgeist. Slade's Lock Up Your Daughters, a 1981 single that's all snarl and swagger, a blistering reminder that these Wolverhampton lads were a rock and roll juggernaut, not just the blokes behind that Christmas earworm. This track is a 3-minute punch of gritty riffs and Noddy Holder's unmistakable bark, shaking off the glam sequins for a raw heavy metal edge. Released on RCA, it stormed to number 29 in the UK and cracked the top 20s across Europe, proving Slade still had fire in their veins after a rough late 1970s. Next, we'll dig into the band's journey from black country pubs to festival stages, unpack the song with Rebel Yell, and get into the nuts and bolts of its chart run and production. This is track 7, our final song today. In a Wolverhampton working men's club circa 1963, a teenage noddy holder grabbed the mic, his voice slicing through the din of clinking pints. He joined Dave Hill on lead guitar, Jim Lee on bass and occasional violin, and Don Powell on drums in a band called the In-Betweens, churning out R&B and Motown covers for local crowds. By 1969, managed by Chaz Chandler, ex-Animals bassist and Jimi Hendrix's mentor, they became Ambrose Slade, then just Slade. Their debut album, Beginnings in 1969, flopped, but a shift to a raw sound paid off with Get Down and Get With It in 1971, a Little Richard cover hitting number 16 on the UK singles chart. Glam rock followed, Platform Boots, Glitter and misspelled hits like 'Cause I Love You in 1971, Take Me Back Home in 1972 and Mama We're All Crazy Now in 1972, all of which hit number 1. From 1971 to 76, Slade notched 17 consecutive top 20 singles, 6 at number 1, and albums like Slade in 1972 also hit number 1, and Old New Borrowed and Blue also hit number 1 in 74. It cemented their reign, blending Holderly songwriting, Hill's sharp solos, and Powell's pounding rhythms. The late 70s, though, hit hard. Punk's rise made glam feel dated, and Slade's Whatever Happened to Slade in 1977 and Return to Base in 79 failed to chart. Gigs dwindled to small venues, though they still played 100-plus shows yearly. Holder reflected in a 2020 Classic Rock interview, "We were grafting, doing 200 gigs a year, but the records weren't shifting." Salvation came at the 1980 Reading Festival. Slotted mid-afternoon before headliners like Ozzy Osbourne, Slade stole the show. A 60,000-strong crowd, many sporting Iron Maiden tees, roared for Come On Feel the Noise. NME called it the gig of the weekend. This triumph, alongside headlining the first Monsters of Rock at Donington Park in 1980 with Rainbow and Scorpions, nudged Slade towards the heavier sound of the new wave of British heavy metal, appealing to fans of Def Leppard and Saxon. Lock Up Your Daughters, released September the 4th, 1981, captured that shift. Written by Holder and Lee, recorded at Ridge Farm Studio in Surrey and produced by the band, it paired with B-side Sign of the Times. It entered the UK Top 75 at number 63, peaked at number 29 on October the 17th, and stayed 8 weeks, exiting November the 7th. UK sales neared 50,000, modest but a comeback signal. It hit number 9 in Germany, number 15 in Sweden, number 20 in Norway and top 30 in the Netherlands. 2 Top of the Pops appearances competed with ITV's Earthquake and Jaws 2, likely capping its UK climb. Radio 1's Round Table with DJs Mike Reed, Dave Lee Travis and guest Eddie Grant praised it unanimously. Sounds Gary Bushell hailed it as rabble-rousing stomp, while Record Mirror's Sooney called it bland rocky anonymity. The Telegraph and Argus's Celia Barlow countered, noting vintage Slade and unhackneyed instrumentation. The song opens with Holder's growl, "Sometimes you're acting the fool, sometimes you're breaking the rules. Sometimes you want to run away, sometimes you stay out of school." It's an ode to teenage defiance rooted in their dirty old town. Tell your mama back home, 'cause she was just the same when she was young. The chorus hits hard. I want to give you some advice. Lock up your daughters right now. It'll give you a smile on your face. Lock up your daughters somehow. This is the time. This is the place. We have to remember that it's the early 80s at this point, and Slade are not yet the caricature that Reeves and Mortimer made them, and the idea of Noddy Holder yelling lock up your daughters isn't totally far-fetched. Hill's phaser-heavy guitar and Powell's driving beat frame Lee's prowling bass. The fade-out piles on harmonies, raw and unpolished, evoking a pub brawl's energy. Live, it was a staple, played at Donington in 81 and European tours. Part of Till Death Do Us Part in November 1981, it sat amongst heavy tracks like Rock and Roll Survival. Unlike Merry Christmas Everybody, a million seller yearly, this was Slade unadorned, rock not tinsel. Holder's 2020 quip in classic rock sums it. We'd come out dressed up like Christmas trees, and now we're a bit more rockery. So, we are now through the first part of Playlist 29, but do join us next week when we descend further into autumn 1981, where we get the backstories of some absolute bangers, including more Depeche Mode, Dave Stewart kicking off his run of musical innovation, we meet Altered Images, and hear my favourite Bad Manners song, amongst others. So, until next week, have a good one, take care.